Now, before we take a look at these expressions of date, time, and so on, I want to draw your attention to some keywords that will help you to avoid that particular abuse of writing. And that is not to start any sentence with a word that could refer to a location in time. These are prepositions: in, during, before, when, while, after, that sort of a thing. Avoid starting any sentence with a word that refers to a point of in time. And if you take those words and what follows them and put them later on in the sentence, you will see that your sentence flows so much better. Now, let's just take a look at this technically. Let's have a look at our sample MRP that I've created for you, and let's see where these things occur. Here is an example of such a thing. When is one of those things that refers to a point in time. Make sure that if you have that word, that it occurs somewhere in the sentence which is not at the beginning of the sentence. Let's take a look at the very beginning of the next sentence, and it begins with "at the age of." Here is a clear reference to an age, and that belongs later on in the sentence, probably right at the end of this sentence. Let's continue scanning the text, and here we see in this particular sentence here one of the most dreadful abuses of writing in the English language, and that is the preposition in followed by a year at the very beginning of the sentence, and sometimes compounded with a comma after it. It's absolutely hideous, and I have no idea why people express themselves this way. Anyway, I hope that you will avoid it, because in fact it will save you many, many points if you do avoid it. That locution in 1603 is perfectly good, but it does not belong at the beginning of a sentence. Move it to the middle of the sentence or the end of a clause within that sentence. And let's continue on here. Here we see 14th century. That's a perfectly good place for a date or a reference to time. Here we have the 1300s, when that's good because it's buried within the sentence like this here. But I do want to point out this one little detail to you. I don't have it in the style guide. Just avoid that. It's a very, very minor thing here, but I'm pointing it out to you now. There is no reason to have an apostrophe in this. Don't use the apostrophe. No, I probably won't give you a 0 if you make that mistake there, but it is something that you will have to correct later on. Now, the next sentence has one of those prepositions of time in it, and you definitely want to get rid of that. Basically, bury it someplace within the sentence. It will work just fine. And let's scan our last paragraph here, and here we have yet another one of these things. A reference to time right at the beginning of a sentence. Write any sentence at all with that particular locution in it, and with it occurring at the beginning of the sentence, and then write it again with that phrase later on in the sentence, and you'll see how much more superior the second one is to the first. Now, on to other details of writing. Do not use any abbreviations for ordinal numbers. Now, you probably have seen many, many times in the podcasts that I have created where I have used abbreviations that look like this here: 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, with a TH at the end of it, or an ND, or an RD for third, or something like that in it. Although I use these for the sake of convenience in those things, I do not want to see them expressed this way. Write this out as a word as 14th. In fact, people, that's the sort of thing that really jumps off the page. I could probably see that a mile away, despite the fact that my eyesight is just terrible. That's the sort of thing that I would locate and that would just come to my attention without my trying whatsoever. So make sure that you avoid that there. Another thing is to use the standard American form for dates. Now, I know that you have the possibility of expressing dates in various ways for various things that you do in your classes, but in this one here I want to see standard American dates, and that is with the month first spelled out in full, the day written as an Arabic numeral, and only one digit if it's a single digit day of the month, 1 through 9, and a comma followed by the year. This particular date that you see here, 07 set period 1366, is just an outrageously strange way to do it. Basically, that should be September written out in full, 7 with no 0 in front of it, comma 1366. Let's move on down through the text here, and let's see what else we have. Oh yes, here's another fun thing that I have seen in the past. Using ordinals within dates. This is really strange. There is no reason whatsoever to have this ordinal in here. The single digit alone is enough to express it. Don't have it in there. You are alert to this thing now. Make sure that you do not let it happen when you are doing your writing. It will save you a lot of time, and it will save you a great many points as well. Now, let's move on to the business of contractions. We use contractions in speech. That is, we elide words. We connect them. In formal writing, however, that is not a desirable thing to do. So please do avoid it. There is no reason to do it. Always write out contractions as two separate words. I'm trying to find exactly where my example of that occurs within this text. And here it is. It was masked by all of those wonderful blahs that you see in this, and here we have didn't. It's simply express this in two words, did not. That's the sort of thing that really jumps out at me when I scan these assignments. And please do keep that in mind when you are going through your own work. Now, number 16 is interesting. I am asking you not to use the present tense for actions and events that both began and ended in the past. I know you get all sorts of terrible examples of this if you watch the news, if you watch documentaries and so on. It's really bizarre. I have no idea why people do it. The past belongs in the past. There is no reason for us to bring the past into the present. It doesn't make it any more alive. It doesn't make it any more relevant. It doesn't make it any more interesting. It's just a really bizarre abuse of the language. And it's also a problem with precision as well. You absolutely must keep the past in the past. And it is actually very disturbing to be reading something and to find the present tense used to describe everything, especially things that began and ended in the past. Now let me very quickly scan through the text here to see if there is one of these things, and here is a good example of it here, possibly talking about a person's biography. And notice that this is something that happened marriages occur on a specific date. It happened in 1371. There is no reason whatsoever to express it in the present tense. It really is actually quite bizarre to see that sort of a thing. And here's an even better example of that. It says X goes to Mantua. Now when you hear the present tense used like that, it's used to indicate a habitual action. And what this would suggest to me is that X, who probably lived back in the 14th century, which is where the content of most of this text is referring to, lived back in the 14th century, and that he is still going to Mantua on a regular basis. That's really strange because everyone who lived during the 14th century is now dead. Everyone who lived during the 14th century is no longer doing anything, and to make it seem that they are still going about their lives is simply bizarre. Okay, please, people, keep the past in the past. Also, do not use any semicolons. And the reason for not using semicolons is really a matter of convenience for me, and it's also a matter of convenience for you. Semicolons are normally used as a mark of punctuation between what could be two separate sentences. And if you avoid the use of them in this assignment here, you will find yourself not in a position to write overly long sentences. So simply avoid the use of semicolons. And finally, because the MRP form has been set up in a certain way that makes it possible for you to enter information onto it without actually harming the form, there is no possibility for you to choose the expression or the style of individual words or letters. And that's why I'm asking you to use double quotation marks for the titles of both major and minor, I mean long and short, musical or literary works. For example, a fugue is a fairly short musical composition. It's normally given in quotation marks. A symphony, on the other hand, is a multi-movement composition, which is much longer. It is normally expressed in italics. For the purpose of this assignment, use quotation marks for both. Although it is possible to do so, please do not mess with the form to put italics into it. If you do so, I will reward you with a 0 for it. I don't want you to be doing any unnecessary work whatsoever. So I am offering you this time-saving option. And in fact, if you take a look at the next section of this assignment, you will understand exactly how careful I have been to spare you of doing any unnecessary work.